we go. All right. Sorry about that. I was trying to start it from the little reminder thing, because I could see that people were getting on and it wouldn't let me start the video from there. So we're going to have to wait just a minute or so people can get the notification.
Okay.
I went on the thing and I saw Brad and Sarah on there, and yeah, it was really weird, but it said they're watching with you, but I'm like, but it won't start.
So is my face really dark?
Yeah, it's a little shadowy. Huh. It's not bad. You can just kind of see a little bit of shadow.
I'm in this different room. Hey, Sarah. I'm kind of hunkered down in the office, so we'll have to deal with that. We'll have to deal with bad lighting.
It's not that bad. It's all right.
How are you, Sarah? Hey, Brad.
There he is. I think my thing's like a little delayed. I saw you guys on the little reminder. I was telling Anne Marie I was trying to start the live broadcast from that thing, and it wouldn't let me. So I'm like, gosh darn it. To start a new one. Hello. All right. I think it's going to take just a few minutes, to doing better. It's been a few couple weeks, just yeah, I saw in the comments, Brad, I saw you and Sarah commenting, and then I saw this thing said, Brad and Sarah watching with you. Oh, that's so weird. That is so weird. Yeah, it wouldn't let me start the live broadcast from that. So anyway, I think people will start kind of trickling in. But
me, I'm kind of frenzied. I think I wrote on that one scope we were on last night. I'm tired, and I don't mean just tired physically. I mean mentally, emotionally, and just completely worn out. We have special guests in the house tonight. My in-laws are here, so I'm looking forward to spending some time with them.
Yeah.
So
it's been a brutal couple of weeks, that's for sure. I think, we're definitely not the only ones that have been getting thrown through the ringer.
Absolutely. Talk about a disconnection, Brad, with internet. I didn't even have a phone for a while, and then I had to take it back to the phone hospital. I crushed it. And then in our attempts to make it better, we made it worse. So it's been very interesting.
Yep. All right, we'll just go ahead and get going. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, so I'd had, the Lord was kind of talking to us about something else last week. And so I was finishing up that for this week. And as I was finishing it up, hey, Deidre.
Hi, Deidre.
The Lord just dropped this word, the word castaways. Hey, Lori, in front of me. And I'm like, castaways, what is that? Hey, Susan. And all of a sudden, as I was just asking, I'm like, what is Castaways? Like my mind instantly went to that movie. And I'm like, well, that's weird. But he's been talking to me through movies lately. So I'm like, well,
mine went to Gilligan's Island. I didn't even think of that movie. That's funny.
Yeah. And I was just like, so I started asking him, like, well, what are you wanting to say with that? Because your mind can just kind of go a bazillion ways with it. And I just started feeling really heavy, a real heaviness, like to the point where I just started bawling my eyes out in my quiet time, about people who have felt like castaways. And here's what I felt him wanting to say to those who have been feeling that. Yeah, well said. I love that movie. Amazing. Anyway. So what the Lord was wanting me to share in regards to that, to kick this off, is that he wanted to say, don't settle down in the hurt and the disappointment. And I've also felt that a lot of those that have felt cast away and cast aside have been feeling held up and held back, and they're blaming the ones that did the casting aside, but it's not them. And the Lord said, if you want to actually move forward, you have to stop the blame game, that you have to forgive without the confrontations, and you have to forgive without receiving an apology. But you also need to understand, hi, Sylvia. You also need to understand that it's a process that none of us perfect that out of the gate. It's a hard process because you're talking about woundedness. You're talking about trying to gain an understanding as to why you've been cast aside, why you've been tossed away, all of that stuff. It is so hard. It is so hard. And the enemy loves to just bring it up every chance he gets, despite how far you actually get in the process of forgiving and still loving and not harboring, bitterness or resentment or jealousy or anything like that. So it almost at points feels like you're actually making progress. You're making a few steps forward, and the enemy comes up and messes with your emotions or messes with something that you happen to see or think that day. And then because you feel it, you almost feel like you've been knocked back more steps than you actually took forward. And part of that, I mean, it's just not true. I mean, the enemy likes to just try to make you feel certain things. But the Lord, he sees your heart. He sees you trying to do the right thing. He sees you trying to forgive and move forward and do it in a loving way. And it is a process. It is a process because it's a healing process. Nothing heals overnight.
And I was just going to say something about that. Like you can, when that happens to you, and I have so many examples over my life of when that happened, but when that has happened, but you can forgive people and truly forgive them. You can let go of any bitterness that you have for being left behind or, not being included in something. And then you cannot be jealous. You're not thinking, oh, I want that back, or I want to be where they are within that group. It has nothing to do with that. You don't even need that relationship back. It's just that you're still wounded and you don't know what to do with that wounded because there's no, I don't know if the right word would be closure, but I look back at the course of my life and, being women and moms and things like that, we have so many groups that we become part of. And then as life moves on, those get restructured and you can absolutely feel left out of things. And we're talking like, whether it's in ministry now or whether it was in middle school, in groups like that, or just as a PTA mom. I mean, there's just so many times throughout our lives that we go through this. You would think that we would grow a thicker skin, but I think, I think anyone and everyone has to admit that there is some hurt when people move on without them or they feel, unconsidered anymore. If I'm saying that right, I don't even know. Is that a word? I just feel like everyone has experienced this at some point in their life. So we're looking for that empathy when we're seeking to understand something. And I think it hurts worse when that empathy isn't there or it's treated as if, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's not really what happened, and then you're thinking and considering different things and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, I look back, I wasn't even going to talk about this yet, but now I'm just like, even like this thought just came to my mind. Do you remember those little friendship pens where you put the little beads on the tiny little safety pens?
Yep.
And they were all different colors and you were each a little color. Well, like, we had this group of us and, I was always on the outskirts. There was always like the really, really cool people and the very center of that. And then I was one of the far out beads. But I was still in that group and I was still included. And then, you know, I'd met this one girl who I thought was like really funny and really cool. And, you know, she wasn't exactly the type of person that would be in that group, but I was like, they are going to have to love her. Like, she's so awesome. I just love hanging out with her. It'd be so great if she was like eating lunch with us and doing everything. So I started to include her more and more. And then it turned out that her color moved up on that little line of the safety pin, and I kind of got pushed down that little line of the safety pin for my color bead, and eventually my bead dropped off, you know, and I couldn't understand, well, wait, all I was doing was trying to include somebody else that would complement this group, but then I kind of got dropped, left, and abandoned. And, you know, I think, you know, I can look back to even younger years, and I can look back to even recently where things like that happen. And I feel like in my last 10 years of my life, I tend to have more empathy towards others who I see are feeling that way. And like, I don't know, I get very, very busy with life right now, with our schedule. And I have some girlfriends that I've been friends with for a very, very long time, years and years. And I feel like I haven't talked to them as much in the past year as I have in the last 20. But I always try to like reach out and make sure I'm still inclusive of them and that they know I still care. So I'm just like thinking about like, how can we make sure that we're not being the casting out or making people feel like they are just by our own negligence, not purposefully. But so I was just kind of went off on a tangent and ended up from a totally different perspective, but it happens. Totally happens.
It absolutely does. And, you know, and I think, you know, of course, with maturity comes understanding that life, you know, it ebbs and it flows, and some will, you know, float a little bit further with you and some won't. And, you know, like you said, like with that empathy and compassion that comes when you've experienced like being the one that's cast, you kind of look around for those that might be feeling the same way. You know, I've been on both sides of the coin. You know, I've done some casting away myself, and in my earlier years, it was done very abrasively, very selfishly. I didn't know how to be a good friend. I didn't know how to be intentional, because I was just a very selfish, awful person. You know, but now, you know, it's like I've experienced the other side, and it does awaken you a little bit. And it does give you that, like you were saying, that empathy and that understanding. And I think, you know, if we each have experienced it at some point of it, you know, we have to remind ourselves to be intentional, intentional with our relationships, intentional with how we handle ourselves. And sometimes we have to be intentional about where our boundary lines are with some people. And I think maybe because people are afraid to have those conversations, then the other person who's not understanding these new boundary lines that you've set up are now feeling cast aside. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to restructure things for you, because this is where, you know, the Lord's telling you to do this. Like, I want you to have this many people in your inner circle, not this many people anymore. Well, when you're shrinking that down in obedience, you've got to be communicative with all these people that the Lord is having you maybe set outside of that inner circle. You have to be intentional. You have to be compassionate and communicative in that. And I think if we as the church can be that, and be loving, then so many people wouldn't be walking out wounded.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a key in this moment. And I was listening to a broadcast earlier, and they were just talking about how they were sharing about this vision that they had, but they were basically talking about, you know, the Lord is kind of coming in and bringing justice to the church, not in a restitution type of way, but in a refreshing kind of way, like cleaning out the junk that the church, we as the church, because we are all human. We all carry woundedness. We all carry, you know, a lot of flesh that still needs to be sacrificed and all of that. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, that you know, the Lord is really cleaning up and refining the church as a whole, so we can limit and bring it to a cease and desist of wounding other people by allowing them to be under the impression of being cast aside or just flat out being cast aside.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yes, totally.
You know, and I just, you know, I think everybody needs to understand that, you know, they are worthy and they have value, no matter past, present decisions, life, or anything like that. And I think that's something, you know, that maybe some people that are doing the casting aside, it can be ignorance. It could just be life and where they're at or whatever. But a lot of people just don't see the value that you have within you. So if they don't see your value, then, you know, in their mindset, whether it's ignorance or just where they're at, they're not going to utilize you because of the value that you know you have, but they don't see it. Did I just make that very confusing?
No, I completely got it.
But I mean, we each have value. We each bring something to the table. Sometimes people see it and sometimes people don't. But here's where I've just kind of come to an understanding. As long as I'm continually making sure that I'm being intentional with everybody around me, I'm trying, you know, I do my best to be intentional and be communicative, but also understanding, and I'm trusting that the Lord is going to bring people in my circle and have certain people leave my circle, because I'm just desiring his plan and purpose over my life. And he's going to do the ebbing and the flowing of people in and out of my life. And sometimes, like you were saying earlier, and sometimes it's painful, because it's a grieving thing too. It's a saying goodbye and, or a see you later. And sometimes those see you laters feel like goodbyes. But just understanding, if you really are trusting the Lord to have his hand fully on you, he's going to have his hand fully on relationships too. And doing that refining within you and around you.
I was trying to think of what I was like smiling earlier because something Lori had said where she said, you know, we really need to, first of all, she said we sometimes we'll never know the answers, but she said, I think we have to stop needing to know the answer to the whys. You know, that's so huge. And I've been able to do that a lot more in my life, but not every time. You know, when do we actually get to the point that we'll be perfect in that? I don't think that will ever happen. You know, there's some relationships that we just, that we get better at, you know, doing things like that, or we see the different ways in which our lives are going. So it's easier to let go. But if there was any kind of woundedness from it, like if you're just hanging out, like there's some PTA moms that I would love to see again, but we've gone our separate ways and we're not including each other in certain things. And sometimes one of us will reach out more to the other one to maybe get together and have a dinner or something. But there's not a weird feeling about it. There's not, it's just something that you've let go of because that was a relationship built on circumstances in your life at that time. And then your kids have grown to a certain point, different groups, and you're moving on. But I think sometimes when you have a really close bond with someone and you think that it's going to last a very, very long time and it doesn't, or you've been part of something for a very, very long time and then all of a sudden you're not part of it, I think those are the things that leave you feeling wounded. I can easily see different areas in my life where I've been pruned of friendships, you know, one that I thought would be a lifelong friendship. And there might be something where this person comes back 20 years from now. We were friends for nearly 20 years. But we had a completely different way of living our lives. And I was really sad and I kept trying to cling to it for the longest time. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm so much healthier without this because I'm not trying to be someone I'm not anymore, you know? And, you know, I think there's times that those things happen and it makes sense to us. And then there's other times where you just feel like you're just dropped, you know, like
Yeah.
trying to think of a saying in my head right now that has to do with drop like a, I don't, hot potato. There we go. Is that right? I'm so
Yeah.
bad at sayings again, so bad, you know, so I think there's just different ways of being that castaway that leave you feeling there are times when it's more easily done to leave it, to let it go and to not dwell on it. But the
Yeah.
time when you know, I don't know, feel very encouraged by the other person to even leave other groups that you were part of to be part of what they are, and that they're the true kind of friend, they're the kind that would never step away, and then you're part of that, and then all of a sudden the next day, next week, next month, next year, you're like, wait a minute, where did that go? You know, and I think I struggle with that because I'm usually more the person to start holding on to people and telling them, oh, we're going to be friends forever. So when someone does it for me, to me, because other people don't do it as much as I do it, I'm ready to like cling to people. Like, I just want to keep growing my family. I don't need to, okay, I'm pulling this person in, so I need to put that person out. There are some people that need to do that because it's just too much for them. They don't need that much. They don't want more than a certain number of friends. The less friends, the better, you know, and I completely get that. But I'm someone that just, I would rather just keep growing my group till it got larger and larger and larger, and not leave anybody behind. But, yeah, so there's just different ways to function when we're coming out of those relationships, and it's just hard. It's hard to navigate some of them, and some of them it's not hard at all.
It is. And Sarah said something earlier that made me think of something that, you know, sometimes it could be a God pruning thing, or it could be a rejection castaway thing. But sometimes it just brings you to a place where you are alone. And sometimes God just allows that to happen because Sarah said something about holding on to, I forgot where it was at. I meant to pin it. God allows everyone else's arms to be unavailable, so his are the only ones left
Yeah,
to run.
very true.
It's so true. And that actually kind of goes into this next part that I felt the Lord wanting to share tonight. And he's had me just buried in the story of David over this last week, and just really like speaking to and confirming a lot of things to me, just in my own life. And I know we said at the very beginning, the last couple of weeks have been really intense. Just, I like to say it is the baseball bat in the enemy's hands of discouragement and frustration that he's just been beating us with on all sides. Absolutely. And so it's just been like this almost constant battle. And that happens sometimes. We do go through those seasons. And I think the reason why he had me and David was for this. And here's what he had me, this is kind of the revelation that he just kind of dumped on me, is that right now, a lot of us might feel that we're alone in the field. But even though we're alone in the field, we've been anointed to be kings and queens. And, you know, David, you know, he was left in the field to watch over the sheep while his brothers were called into the house for Samuel, you know, when Samuel arrived to anoint the next king. He wasn't even a thought on his dad's mind to call him in to be one in the line to have Samuel look him over. That's pretty harsh. Oh, yeah. You know, and the Lord has just highlighted to me over and over and over again throughout the entire Bible, the last ones on anybody's minds are usually the ones that God is choosing. So if you are the one alone in the field, you're the last to be picked. You are the last thought on somebody else's mind. You're not the first one that people would choose. Trust me, you're the first one that God's choosing. And I really felt like somebody really needed to hear that tonight, because I'm going to tell you something. I needed to hear it too. When the Lord showed that to me again, I mean, I've read this scripture a zillion times now, and every time I read it, I get something new. And this time, that was the thing that was highlighted to me, and it just wrecked me. And it's like, you know, he loves to confirm his love for us. He loves to confirm his purpose over us. And, you know, so it doesn't matter who people choose. What matters is who God has chosen, and he's chosen you. You know, your words have value.
Yeah, that goes right along with, you know, what he had said to me earlier when we were talking. You know, he said, there is a time that each of, you know, he gave me the revelation of, there is a time that each of us will stand alone. No one with us as we look into the face of Jesus. We won't be looking to our left or to our right. We will not be looking behind us or for someone that is ahead. We will only be looking to him and him to us. This should be the way in which we live every day that we are on this earth, knowing we are facing Jesus alone. Who chooses to be with us or leave us will not matter in his eyes as we stand before him. Our popularity is not the scale used for his approval and love.
Amen. Yeah. So good. You know, when David, you know, after he was anointed, he went back out to the field. You know, I think there's a part of us that, you know, we might not like being alone, but there's a comfort that we find in the field. And in that field, David was prepared. You know, it was his preparation time. And we've talked about this before, about the quiet time being our preparation time. You know, and with David, you know, he very quick to ignore other people's opinions. I mean, he clearly didn't have great opinions from his family about him, especially after he got anointed. I mean, his brother, you know, just whatever that was, you know, and he was consumed with worship. He was consumed with his worship for God. And he didn't become, you know, he wasn't the worshiper that we all know right off the bat. His time of worshiping was in the field. And then he was also equipped for battle when he was in the field. So when no one was looking, no one was there to witness, the Lord prepared him to take out a bear and a lion with his bare hands. His bare hands and his faith in God and the strength that God gave him were the weapons that God gave him for those two battles, when no one was looking, in the quiet. And I really feel like a lot of us have battled some pretty severe predators like the bear and lion in our quiet, in our aloneness. And a lot of times that bear and that lion can represent the unforgiveness, the hurt, just character healing. You know, I know that's happened a lot for me over the last 7 years. He's done a big change in me and a big change in my character and who he really truly created me to be, because who I was 7+ years ago is not who I am today. And that's all him, me being in the battle with the weapons that he gave me in the quiet alone. And then, you know, he still knew, you know, that he was anointed to be king, but he allowed the Lord to equip him in the quiet. And that's what I was just saying. And then he kept his humility when his dad made him the bread and cheese delivery boy. You know, dad comes out to the field. Hey, your brothers are on the battlefield. Take them some bread and cheese. He could have said, hey, I'm king. Who are you talking to? But he didn't. He said, okay. And here's the thing, being willing and being humble, being the bread and cheese delivery boy, took him on the path to the throne. And the path to the throne put him in front of a giant that everyone else is afraid to battle. So who knows what giant you're going to be battling in front of people that they're too afraid to battle.
Well, and that just brought me back.
Have a thing over it.
That just goes right back to what Sarah was saying, where she was abandoned at some of the at the time where she most needed some people. And when they stepped away, she was, wounded by that. And, I can completely relate to that, Sarah. I mean, so many times in my life, whether it was, after some financial loss, or, after, Marty and I had the issues that I've talked about on here several times, people just don't want to be around that. They're scared of it. They're literally scared of it, like the giant. And so they flee, out of fear that, maybe that giant will come after them if they stand too close to the one that's standing up against it, and
sometimes it's messy for some people to handle.
It really is. And then of course, then there's the loss when you lose someone that you love dearly, people don't know how to react to that. So they tend to slip a card in the mail and turn the other direction. So it's really hard. That's a very difficult thing to walk through, Sarah. I'm right there with you. That's been some of the hardest loss, but I will tell you that, and because of losing, experiencing that before, that when I came to the loss of my dad and then some people stepped away, I was actually really ready for it and had developed more maturely to be able to handle it. And I actually felt at peace with it. You know what I mean? Like he definitely grows us in, we may still not understand it, but we become okay with it in some of those instances, and some of those things, like I said, if there wasn't a wounding, if there was literally just a walking away, I don't think that we are left wondering and trying to figure it out. It's when we are wounded that those feelings of needing to know, that's when those hard feelings come through.
And that's the real hard part. And that's what I said, earlier, that, I've had to do this several times with some people that I shouldn't have had to do it with. But it was being okay without the answers and without the confrontation, because I desperately wanted to confront them, like really wanted to confront them. Some of it was just anger that I needed to, get off my chest and all this stuff. But the other part of that confrontation was, I want to know why, why you acted a fool,
Mm-hmm.
why all that, so I had to be okay without the confrontation. And then I had to be okay knowing that person was probably never going to give me an apology. That is hard. That has got to be the hardest thing, because you're dealing with a lot of wide open space for thoughts to come in that may or may not be true, because a lot of them, 98 to 99% of them, are straight up assumption. It's assuming this person even realizes what they've done. It's assuming that they did it intentionally. It's, you know what I mean? There's so much open space for assumption. And that's what, it was hard. Like I literally felt like I got chewed up and spat out and nobody cared.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't confront them because the Lord was literally shutting my mouth, never allowed the opportunity to come for me to have that confrontation that I was looking for. Like I was seeking out a way to confront and the Lord shut it down. Like he would not confront. And then once I got past the point of like wanting to have that confrontation to get some answers, then it was the next step. Now I want you to forgive them, being at peace, knowing that you will probably never get an apology from them. I'm telling you that process was so painful and it was so hard, because did I deserve an apology? Absolutely. I absolutely did. I deserved an explanation. I deserved an apology. But that's the beautiful thing about God and his healing, is that he will heal you if other people aren't willing to help you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's an incredible thing, and it's a little hard to describe when you haven't had to walk it. But
I think that's where I was
he will definitely do it.
That's where I was when I was coming out of, I mean, I was a maybe 15 months out of the trauma experienced in my marriage. And I mean, it rained 25 days out of the month of May. And I was just at a very alone place. I just quit my job. So I was home every day. There was nothing to do because it was raining. Everybody else was busy doing things. And I was literally on my knees in that place of needing healing from just the past few years of my life and my marriage, from my loss of my father, all of those things. And that's when I was lucky enough to stumble upon those workshops of Nate and Christy Johnson's. And had I not been in that place, that wouldn't have happened. You know, Brad made a comment that's so true up here, where he said, God puts people in your life for a reason and removes them from your life for a better reason. And that is so true. So true with so many things. And I can see that with that long-term friend that was like, you know, someone that I thought we would be. Absolutely. I feel like there was definitely a reason for that pruning. And again, we don't know if that person will be brought back into our lives for any reason. I look at my mom's life, where she and this woman were best of friends, lived down the street from one another, did everything together. Kids did everything together. And they moved to separate ends of the county. They don't really see each other. They run in different circles. Well, my mom didn't run in any circles. She just ran with my dad. But, you know, they have different interests and things like that, and they fall away. And 40 years later, here they both lost their husbands within a couple years, and now they're both back living in the same neighborhood, having lunch once a week and taking cruises. So to me, it's when you say goodbye to someone, you can never know if that's for forever. So I always am open to those people walking back in. But sometimes I think, and now I lost that comment, I don't know where it went to. You know, he removes them for a better reason. I think it's those things where, I think it's those friendships or family relationships or whatever it might be, where it doesn't really have a bearing on anything that you're doing, whether they're there or not. Like, they're not directly related to what you're doing, but they just go away. Like, I see significance in the pruning of some people, you know, but I don't see the purpose behind some other relationships that are just kind of cut off instead of dwindled off. So I think that's the difficult one to navigate through, because I love to look at God's purpose for bringing relationships to me and also for removing them. Yeah. And I totally see purpose in that. But it's the ones that are kind of just there, they're like these great people to have around you, and then they're like gone. And you don't understand why, or maybe that closeness is gone that was there before. Yeah. And you just can't figure it out. That's the only place where I still struggle. There's so many things that I've grown greatly in, but there's still that one spot where you just don't understand, because I don't know, just because.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, as long as we can, you know, even in our woundedness, we can still walk in love and forgiveness. Even though the forgiveness comes at stages, there's still a way to walk in love, so that you're not being held back or hindered, you know. And, you know, back to this David thing, you know, like, he could have had massive attitude with everybody in his family, but he just went with the flow. I mean, you know, reading the scriptures, I mean, he could have battled this stuff. It doesn't really say it, but, you know, he could have an attitude with his brothers, because his brothers were just like, dude, just go watch the sheep, you know. And his dad is like, no, you don't need to come see this prophet that's coming to meet with the family. You know, he could have had an attitude about all of that. But he just like took it in stride. And I think even in our woundedness, even in our rejection, even in our lack of understanding, yeah, Sarah, you know, even if we just have a pinpoint of the picture, you know, we can still walk the way the Lord wants us to walk, because I mean, he's just that gracious and he's just that merciful with us, that, you know, he sees our heart, he sees that it's wounded, and he sees our desire to continue to be who he created us to be. And I think that's why I'm just so like related to David right now, that, you know, I just, you know, you see all of this, and, you know, he was equipped for the battle with the lion and the bear, but his equipment was his bare hands. And then he showed up to battle this giant that no one else was willing to, they were fearful of, and the Lord gave him a rock. So he went from his bare hands and quiet to a rock out in front of everybody else. And, you know, and it just, it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, you've got all these people hiding in their tents, and they are the ones that are clad for war. They're the ones that have the swords and the spears and the shields and the, you know, all the garb, you know, all the metal stuff that they wore. And they were terrified, hiding in their tents and all this stuff, and just letting this guy, like, the giant wasn't even wielding his sword. He was just running his mouth. And how often is the enemy that way? I mean, he's not even using weapons half the time. He's just running his mouth. And how many times, I mean, and it's like half my battles are him just doing this. You know, he's not actually doing something to me. He's just doing this, trying to get me to think something, to feel something that isn't the truth. Right. And, you know, and as I was thinking about this whole battle scene, and the enemy just running his mouth, you know, and the Lord equipping David with, I mean, he gave him 5 rocks, but he only needed 1, you know. He just gave me this vision, you know, when Saul tried to give David his stuff, and it was like, you know, no one else's equipment is going to bring you the victory that the Lord wants to bring to you, you know, because where did I write it down? I don't want to say it wrong. Because their weapons were forged elsewhere, and they don't carry your anointing. I just, how many times have I forgotten what weapons the Lord has already prepared me with to fight the battles that I've now walked up to? You know, we're never going to be battle free. And I think that was maybe a disillusion that I was under for a while, not recently, but, you know, several years ago, is that the Lord would take care of it all. I won't have any battles. I won't have any hurts or anything like that. I mean, I was a little, wasn't quite there yet. But it just, he always has us equipped with what we need for that moment. And I just think sometimes we forget that. And I think we just discount, you know, what we've already been given. And yeah, that's exactly right. And I've caught myself doing that, not recently, but I would say over the last 6 months to a year, I've caught myself doing that, the comparison thing. And, you know, I've talked about that before, about how comparison just kills. And it literally does. It kills every single thing.
Absolutely.
Because you look at situations like, well, I don't write like that person, and that person's writing is so much more fiery and all this stuff. And, you know, and then the Lord's back to, but what is your voice? What am I having you write? You know? And it's like, if I sat there and I tried to write the way so-and-so writes, then it's just going to sound dumb and it's going to
Well,
fall flat.
it's not going to reach the people that you needed to reach. You know,
Exactly.
I don't
Exactly.
want my words or my prayers to sound like someone else's, because God's sending my voice out to people that will hear my unique sound,
Absolutely.
hear him through my unique sound, I should say.
I mean, it's obvious to me, you know, when we're alone in the quiet, being forged by God, that our weapon, our rock, is more powerful than an entire army's worth of swords, because they were not prepared to fight that giant. David was.
Right.
You know, and I just think we are all in our quiet, and we are all going to be called to fight a giant that somebody else is afraid to fight, and he's going to give you that power to do it. He's going to give you the power to take that thing down, cut its head off, and say, you'll be turning around going, see what my God has done. This is what my God has done with me and through me, because I was surrendered, because I was alone, because I was willing to let him fix me, to let him heal me, to let him, you know, equip me with everything that he planned for me all along. You know, it does.
Well, if I could pop in there, you
Yeah.
know, I think sometimes that's the great purpose behind the removal and the pruning. You know, Brad brought up the Judases, and that's so true. God does, he sees the Judases and he removes them before they are troublesome in our lives. But sometimes there's not a Judas. You know what I mean? Sometimes we just feel like, do they think I'm a Judas? Why are they walking away from me? Things like that. But sometimes it's just, for what you were just talking about, it's just, you know, I don't know how to even put that. I just kind of lost my train of thought. I'm like trying to figure it all out in my head, that sometimes it's not that there's this bad thing that's going to happen from us being friends with them. It's just that they're going to either stifle us or possibly distract us. And there's nothing purposeful there. You know, we shouldn't be seeking out friendships based on where they can get us, you know, either. So, I mean, it's just such a fine line. You don't want to base your friendships on what they can give to you or get you to.
Right.
But yet you don't want to have friendships that hinder you.
Yeah.
You know, and I like to look around to anyone that I'm friends with, and like even the person that like was pruned after such a long period of time, like I don't think of her as a Judas. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's just that it would have definitely tripped me up or kept me in a place of immaturity in areas of my life. And not that that person was immature. It was more of, I wouldn't have grown in the areas that I needed to grow in. And my reactions to things that I was coming up against, I wouldn't have been strong in had I remained friends with that person. You know?
Right.
So I can definitely see that. It's just so hard. It's so hard to navigate. This is just such a tender subject, because you never, like for me, like it's very difficult for me to say goodbye to people. Very, very difficult for me to say goodbye. It's very difficult for me to do it without confrontation, and not confrontation in a bad way, but to like not allow the elephant in the room, even though there's no room anymore. Like, it's to leave things unsaid. I'm not someone to leave things unsaid. And even when people walk away or I have to walk away, there's not a loss of love. And I feel like I'm someone that's a feeler. I want to feel that love even as there's that separation. And I used to be a person that would chase that down. I used to chase it down and try to talk with the person. And I have found that I have not been able to do that, you know, as I've gotten older, because it's not socially acceptable to do that. It's frowned upon.
Yeah.
You know, because it's almost like people are feeling like they're questioned, and it's not. It's just validation in the fact that you had a friendship and now it's gone, or it's not the same. You
Right.
know, it's nothing to be defensive about. It's just validating that mutual caring, and that caring's not gone just because there's a separation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this whole, it is so multifaceted, you know, I mean, you can talk about, you know, every angle on both sides of the coin. So there's the one side of the coin, and then there's like all, you know, realms that can talk about. And then on the other side of the coin, there's all these ways that we can talk about it. And at the end of the day, it is just, it's an intentionality in communication, and intentionality to consider others, the whole, treat those the way you want to be treated, kind of thing. I mean, if you want others to treat you, in a way that, I'm stumbling over my words, but you know what I'm trying to say. I mean, you have to be intentional. You have to communicate, and sometimes that communication is difficult. And then, you also have to, like when you were talking about the Judas thing. I mean, there are those times, but there's also a lot of discernment that comes, or that is given, because I think with anything and everything in this life, as we continue to walk forward and things are ebbing and flowing, like we said earlier, the Lord's going to give you discernment, and you're going to know when something is from him and when something is not. And I think, that helps define that fine line for you, so that you can avoid hurting others and hopefully avoid being deeply wounded.
Mm-hmm. My brain's just rabbit trailing off to so things right now that I could move on to. And I just, it's like you said earlier, this is a topic that could go on for days, because there are so many rabbit trails you could go down, with that, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I knew the Lord wanted this to be a topic of conversation, and I just felt, to just really touch on it, in a way to just encourage those that, even if, you've been picked last your whole life, the Lord picks you first. And, if you're alone, he's preparing you for something, and he's equipping you to deal with the battles, that you're going to be coming up against. Let's see what Sarah said real quick. Yeah. I agree with you there, Sarah. You can cherish something, but also trust that the Lord will either keep it in your life or allow things to fall where they may. I definitely have learned that as well. That I'm not holding tightly to so tightly to something or someone that it literally rips my arms off when they have to go. It will still hurt your heart a little bit, but you can cherish something and not, hold.
And I think for me, as I've gotten older, I think when something is just stripped away, like a friendship, like that one, literally, like it was just gone. And I had another mentor type person who was dealing with her own battles at the time, and she just really, I was going through my traumatic experiences, she was going through some battles, and it was removed very quickly. I think one of the harder things that I have found, and it's been throughout my life, whether in the middle school era or the PTA era or even now, where you have these close relationships and then suddenly they're not close anymore, but you're still in that group of people, so you don't know what to do. you know, and that can be at your church, and that can be at your job. It can be a ministry. It can be anywhere, but you kind of just, it's truly like, you don't know what to do, because there's that closeness that was there, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore, and you don't know why. Nothing significant has happened between the two of you to make that change, you know. And that takes me back to that whole thing. You know, I start thinking the names of the middle school friends, and I'm like, no, I don't know how to say that. You know, where, you know, all of a sudden it's just weird. You were really close with all these people, you were really close with this person. Then all of a sudden they're there, and then you're just kind of like out there, just kind of, okay, well, where do I fit in now? And you don't know what to do about it. And there's nothing really to do about it. I think those are the hardest feelings to get through. I don't even think that there is anything to do about it. You know, and that's where I'm saying it's not the Judases, it's not the, you know, betrayals, it's not the things that could lead you down the wrong path. It's just kind of that weird fish out of water, like, I just don't know what to do. I think those are the ones that I struggle the most with, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always pretty much felt like a square peg in a round hole world, you know, like I never really ever fit in anywhere. And I found a lot of times my corners were rubbing people wrong. So I've just kind of gotten used to like not fitting in. And, you know, but the Lord, he's talked to me about that too. You know, it's just, sometimes you fit, you know, some people accept your oddities. Some people, you know, accept all of that. And some people just don't want that. And, you know, because you don't talk like them, you don't act like them. You know, I joke about, you know, ghetto Amy trying to come out sometimes, and you know, and that makes people uncomfortable for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't throw it down. But you know, I guess I've gotten used to just being accepted, not being accepted, you know, being included, not being included. And I'm not going to say that every time that I was excluded felt great, because it didn't. But it, me too, Sarah.
I think Sarah just joined the Lori, Amy, and Marie club.
Yeah.
Lori, I think next year we'll all get those like waving men and
yeah. Out. Oh, I love that. Yeah. You know, and I guess I've learned to more or less embrace my rejections. I mean, not that it takes away the pain, but I guess I'm just learning to embrace everybody's humanity and understanding my own, and where all my flaws are and where all my weaknesses are. You know, I was listening to, I think it was Ryan Johnson that was talking about it today, of reevaluating ourselves. Like, what are we evaluating? Are we evaluating everybody else? Are we looking at everybody else and what's wrong with them? And, you know, all this is going wrong, and it's their fault. When in actual reality, maybe it's something that I said or did. And it just really kind of was like, yeah, that's exactly what the Lord's had me doing over like the last year or so, is evaluating myself. Mm-hmm. And looking at each of my relationships with every single person that I have one with, saying, okay, where do I need to improve in this? Like, did I say something? Did I do something? Did I receive something the wrong way? Like, did they not even do anything wrong? Did they not even say anything wrong? And I just perceived it a certain way because I was like in a bad mood that day, you know, that kind of stuff. So, and I think maybe that's just kind of where the Lord has brought me, you know. So, you know, we can talk about this stuff with a lot of compassion and a lot of authority, because when the Lord brings you through something and has you conquer something, he gives you authority over it. And so I just think if we function in that compassion, if we function in the love of the Lord, and he gives us authority over it. Every time that new one comes up, that new rejection, that new relationship didn't go as strong and as long as you thought it was going to, and you experience that casting aside again, or that rejection, or that I'm ignoring you now kind of thing, then you can sit back and go, okay, well, I've been here and done this before. Not going to happen again. Yes, it still hurts. Yes, my feelings are hurt, but I don't have to receive their rejection on a level that maybe my emotions are trying to feel it. Does that make any sense? Like, my emotions can get the best of me sometime, but I've learned to not trust them. I've learned to just speak above them and declare out that authority, so to speak, of saying, yes, that's there, but it's not going to consume me. I'm going to allow myself to feel it because I am human and I'm not a freaking robot. So I'm going to allow myself to feel that hurt. I'm going to allow myself, yes, I did get rejected. Yes, I did get hurt. Yes, I was ignored. Yes, I was cast aside, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to dwell there. I'm not going to dwell in that hurt, because the moment you settle in it, that's when all of that stuff just instantly takes root. And then it takes you that much longer to climb up out of it. So, and that's just that weapon that you get once you've really trudged through the mud of having to go through that painful thing. Then, you have that authority to catch the next one that comes, and then the next one comes. Because this is going to be and this is going to be an ongoing thing. Because
Absolutely.
we are all human, and B, we are all going to screw up. We're all going to hurt somebody. We are all going to be hurt. So how we handle ourselves is going to be the reflection of where we are in the process. We can still love deeply of those people that have decided to maybe move on, that have decided to go this different direction, that needed to go that different direction. It doesn't matter the decision process. It's how you're receiving it, how you're processing through it quickly and authoritatively. Yes, feel it, process it, but don't settle in it. And, and that's just kind of where I've been. And, it's that rock in your hand to defeat that giant. That giant's always going to be there. There's always going to be, yeah, there's always going to be that, there's always going to be that thing that keeps creeping up because of the ebb and flow of life. And because we are all moving forward, we're all walking the path that the Lord has for us. And sometimes they're the same path, and sometimes they're parallel, and sometimes they just split off. And like you said earlier, Anne Marie, when you don't settle in the hurt and the disappointment and the rejection and all of that, then you're open to, that forgiveness and that love, and you're open to maybe a future joining back together, that maybe
Absolutely.
we'll come back together in the future, that maybe right now in this particular moment of our time, we're not meant to walk together like hand in hand. We're still, just maybe circling a different way. And maybe somewhere in the future, the Lord will bring us back together, because, we still deeply love those people. We still, are cheering them on. We're still championing for them in their path, in their walk, as well as, the ones that the Lord has put right next to us in these moments. So, when you don't dwell in it, when you don't just sit and wallow in the hurt, you're able to just pop right back up and keep walking forward. Yes, it still hurts, but it processes through you faster.
Well, and it just, I know we say this, and we say it all the time, many of us do, about seasons. And there, there are the seasons of friendship. And you do go through just seasons of relationship with people. You could be like, if I look at my sister-in-laws, early on when I was brand new married to Marty, and like I would be really close to the sister-in-law, and then not so much. And then I was to this sister-in-law. And like, to me, it's like, I want to be like those television shows where you're all like just close all the time. you know, and I didn't understand that. And, you know, my mom had brought it to my attention that there are seasons. And so you can move from one person to the next. And it's not that you're doing it out of benefit, but it's more out of like, that's what's going on in your life. So like when my one sister-in-law and I were both trying to get pregnant, like there was that closeness. And then, you know, then there was some closeness with another sister-in-law for some reason. So those relationships did ebb and flow with the seasons. But what really just struck me just now while you were talking was the fact that how long has this winter been? Like, you know what I mean? And so there are some seasons that will last longer, because I think of friendships that I got close to really, really fast and thought like they were going to be forever, deep friendships for forever. And maybe they will come back again. They're, you know, I'm not saying that they're over. I'm just saying they just don't seem as close as they would have been. It seemed to go like way too fast. Like, I was like, wait a minute. It was like that, you know, when you don't even have a spring, like it just went from winter to summer and then what? Like so to me, it's like you find this spring, you get this friendship, you're feeling really close. And then all of a sudden it's winter. You had no summer or fall in between. Like it just, you know, you had this great thing and then you moved on to not being there. So you were in winter. And I think, you know, we just have to accept whether the seasons are normal length or extended.
Yeah.
You know?
That's right.
Or when they're shortened or don't exist at all. And I think that's the big thing to get used to. 47, still not used to it, but I'm getting to understand that it's okay.
Yeah.
So
it is.
It's a little after 10. I'm going to have to visit with my company.
Yes. Yeah, we'll need to get it wrapped up here.
Yeah. I wanted to
definitely,
you know, pray over everyone if we wanted to do that, or if you had something else you still had there. To talk about.
No, we covered it.
Yeah, it was just in my quiet time, and I just, you know, felt that I really just wanted to pray over everyone here. So I just want to say, Lord, I pray everyone here feels loved and accepted. Lord, remove any of the lies the enemy has whispered to make them feel alone, unworthy, not enough, or cast away. Lord, I ask that you penetrate each of our hearts with your love. Overwhelm us with the confidence that only you can give, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made in your image. Remind us who we are and whose we are. Strip us of any fear of being left behind or left out, and remind us that we are each one of your chosen ones, and that we will dwell with you in eternity forever. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We'll wrap it up and you can get to see your visitors and
yes,
my kids tucked into bed. And all right. And then we'll
thank you
again next week. It was definitely a long break. Missed talking to you guys. I never thought I would actually miss like being on a live broadcast.
No.
I missed talking to everybody and seeing everybody on here.
I was really sad last week because I don't know if all of you know this, but Marty and I have a renovation business, and we were literally trying to finish up 2 major bathroom renovations, work with someone on another small one, get some plumbing work all in before we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. So I think we pulled 80 hours last week, not 40 each, like 80 each.
Yeah.
And we were totally exhausted. But it was nice. It actually, when we went away for 2 nights for the first time in a long time, it was raining, but we didn't care. We just enjoyed the rest. So hopefully then after this weekend, we'll be even more rested and we can fall back into place next week, because I know this week was kind of like a big jump for me because I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but I didn't want to miss another one. I really do enjoy interacting with everybody on here. It's family.
Yes, very much so. All right, everyone. We will see you
Next
week.
That's right.
Love you guys. Thanks for jumping
Love you.
on.
Bye.
Bye.